You're listening to the Radio Wammo Breakfast, only on Kiwi.
Well, did you know it's Cool Week this week? Yes, country of origin labelling. Yes, there's a bunch of industry and consumer groups that have got together to try and introduce mandatory country of origin labelling. You know, so you know where your food comes from, whether or not it comes from New Zealand, Australia, Canada or China. Because at the moment, you could be going to a supermarket and you might come out a little bit puzzled about where some of that produce actually comes from. Talk with us about the consumer point of view and why country of origin labelling might be good for the consumer. It's Sue Chetwin from the Consumers Institute. Morning, Sue.
Good morning.
Morning. Now, I can see why for growers that country of origin labelling might be a good idea, just because basically it says, look, my product comes from New Zealand. Potentially, it's clean and green. Potentially, it's organic. But what about for the consumer, Sue?
Well, that's good information for the consumer to have as well. But basically, the important thing for people when they're out shopping is that they have as much knowledge as possible, and they know that about when they're buying clothes, because that has to have country of origin labelling, shoes, wine, and food is probably even more important, because even though, we do have safety measures in this country that are meant to protect us, let's face it, there is stuff coming in from overseas where we don't necessarily know how it's been handled, who's handled it, and if we knew the country it was coming from, then it would help us.
Why is there a little bit of resistance to this at the moment, do you think? What have you heard about why there's resistance?
Oh, well, look, there's all sorts of arguments put up. One is that, of course, that it isn't a public health and safety issue, but, we acknowledge that, but there are other reasons why people want to know where their food comes from. There's the cost. And we don't necessarily accept that argument either, because most consumers are demanding it on whole or single ingredient foods, and manufacturers are already having to have systems for knowing where that food comes from, and are already well able to label and mislabel products. There's other arguments. They talk about multi-ingredient products, and we agree that does pose a bit of a problem, but it's really the single product or single ingredient product that we're actually talking about.
So what are examples?
Well, the single, meat, fruit, vegetables, any product that really only has one ingredient in it, or one major ingredient. And foodstuffs and Progressive, which are the two major supermarket chains, have come to the party and said, they are going to do it on fresh fruit and vegetables. But there's no regulation around that, and our research has showed that sort of self-regulation or self-monitoring isn't working particularly well. A lot of the products are mislabelled, and the supermarkets, when one bin of bananas is empty, they're not going to necessarily fill that bin up with bananas from exactly the same place as they were before.
Well, that's right. And we heard from one grower last week at a forum for this country of origin labelling, who said that his nashi pears ended up with some nashi pears from overseas, all bundled in together.
That's right, yeah. So, without proper regulation around this, at best it's half-hearted. And one of the other arguments is it's the effect on trade, but we just don't accept that is an argument, because most of our major trading partners require some sort of cool labelling. And certainly the US, Canada, Australia, even China, and the EU has requirements. So, at the very least, New Zealanders should have the same advantages when they're shopping as Australians. And in fact, we have the opportunity to be part of the joint food standard that Australia has, but we opted to pull out of that, which was very disappointing. We think that should definitely be reconsidered.
I wonder, Sue, at what point in our history we lost the knowledge of where our food came from?
Probably at the point where we started to import more than we were actually producing ourselves. And I don't think, people realise the extent to which we actually import food. Sue Kedgley, the Green MP, was saying last week, we thought it was $3 billion, but it's actually $4 billion worth of products coming into this country. So, if we weren't importing food, half our supermarket shelves would be empty.
Yeah.
So it's really important for consumers to know where their food is coming from. And, consumers want to avoid some countries for ethical reasons. They want to safeguard against questionable quality control. They may want to support local producers and the local economy. I mean, there's plenty of reasons for people to want to know where their food comes from.
What about the issues with, labelling in general? Where when you look at some products, I go down to my local Asian supermarkets and find that that many of the products there don't have any English on them at all.
Yeah, and that's completely against our food safety regulations.
Well, how do they get through then?
That's right, and it's a very good question, and we continue to monitor that because we're concerned at the number of products, and it's not just in Asian food shops. You can go into supermarkets, you can even go into chemists and find stuff in there that has labelling that doesn't carry any English. Now, that's strictly against the food regulations, and that's not being monitored properly, so, people, should be careful when they're buying stuff that doesn't have any English labelling on it. And we are concerned that even in that area that it's not monitored when it's coming into the country, and once it's here it's also not being monitored, and that is against the food safety regulations.
Is this rather extraordinary that so many different various sector groups have got together to petition the government with this country of origin labelling week?
Oh, look, I think it's really, it's really exciting that we've joined together with, farmers and producers, the Greens, a whole bunch of us. We're quite a disparate group in many ways, but all agreeing that, country of origin labelling is an important tool for consumers when they're out shopping. Yeah.
Sue, thanks very much for your time.
Pleasure.
Sue Chetwin from the Consumers Institute talking about country of origin labelling. If you want to know more about it, check out the website cool.org.nz. We'll feature more interviews throughout the rest of the week from some of the other major industry players who are also having their say on this issue as well.